Just for the sake of didactics and making the clinical step-by-step implications a little easier to follow, I will be using a dentiform, a mannequin, if you will, because it's easier for us to photograph the steps that we want to show as opposed to a clinical case. For a class 4 and a veneer, if you're doing any type of incisal modification, first thing you need is to have some sort of a putty made out of a wax up or in the mouth from a mock-up, so you have a guide for your layering. Also, if you're looking at thickness, and if you're considering the 0.3, 0.71 millimeter facial thickness for your veneer for your preparation, it's always nice to have a putty made labially for you to check the preparation as a guideline, like a putty for prep assessment. Now, it's very important that you prep a facial bevel about 2 millimeters, 1.5 millimeters to 2 millimeters long, so omnichroma will blend in and phase out a little more smoothly so you don't see the transition, and also place a lingual bevel for retention. Here's a little tip for you, a clinical tip. You can use your putty, and instead of using the regular omnichroma, you can use the flow to create a very thin lingual shell. And if you want more translucency, say if you want more of a halo or translucent halo, you want to use omnichroma flow of higher translucency, which is the regular one. Or if you want to block out some of that translucency, you can just go ahead and use omnichroma blocker instead of using the regular flow. Now, in this particular case here, I'm using the regular omnichroma flow because I wanted to create a very nice lingual shell of higher translucency to replicate the incisal halo and all the beautiful characteristics that we get from an enamel-like composite. So this is a good tip for you. Then you want to use the blocker as a dentin substrate to conceal that transition line. If you just used omnichroma plainly, you would see too much of a whitish color. In other words, you wouldn't have a blend in because you would be thicker than 1 millimeter. It would be too white. It may work at times, but you won't see that beautiful dentin-like substrate color showing through. So what you want to do is apply omnichroma blocker. You sculpt it very much like a dentin, histological contour, blend it over the bevel so it disappears, and leave room incisally for the other shade of omnichroma to be applied over and to have light transmission, and you pick up that beautiful light around the incisal edge. So you do a little sculpting with a brush, if you will, light cure. And here's a little tip for you. You may take like Toffelmeyer type, very thin, like dead soft matrix bands, like this one I used from Cosmodent, and I clip it and I wrap it around the proximal so that I have this curvature, creating a nice embrasure contour. So what I do now is I just take my omnichroma, regular omnichroma, and I go on top of that and I sculpt it, packing in to final contour. And that gives me a very nice contour. It's just one shade. There's no layering, no cutting back or anything. Refine it with the brush, light cure it, remove the matrix band, and there you have it. It changes the light transmission. It picks up the light color, the dentin color underneath from the blocker, and it has that beautiful translucency around the incisal edge. And then you're going to do your primary anatomy polishing. Now we need to look at where our point angles are, and then where you want your line angles to be, so that you can create a nice transition from facial to proximal. And then after doing that, you can do your lobes and secondary anatomy with the burst. And omnichroma is so easy to polish. If you just use these two rubber wheels, you should have omnichroma shine just like natural enamel. But if you want to go on and use a diamond polishing paste or an aluminum oxide paste, you can do that as well.